Have you ever experienced one of those moments when a single sentence completely transforms how you view your entire existence? I sure have. And it happened on a regular Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. while I was reviewing our fall seasonal menu in my office. My name is Magnolia. I'm 58 years old, and for the longest time I believed that being a mother meant accepting any kind of treatment from your children as long as they were doing well. Today I know I was completely wrong. The phone rang, and as always my heart raced when I saw Austin's name on the screen. Not because something was wrong. My sons are responsible, independent adults. But because over recent years our conversations had become distant, polite, but distant. "Mom?" His voice overflowed with excitement I hadn't heard in ages. "I have incredible news to share." I smiled, leaning my elbow on the desk. "Tell me, son, what happened?" "I got that position in Houston I mentioned. The company approved my transfer. I'll be making double what I earn here, Mom. Double. Savannah is over the moon, and Wyatt will be attending an international school. It's the opportunity of our lifetime." I felt a tightness in my chest. Houston is over 500 miles from here. My only grandson, whom I already saw so little of, would be even more distant. But the joy in my son's voice made me swallow the sadness that was creeping up. "That's wonderful, Austin. I'm so proud. When are y'all moving?" "End of the month. I know it's quick, but I can't let this chance slip by." He paused, and I could hear Savannah talking in the background. "That's exactly why we're planning a special farewell dinner. Somewhere worthy of the occasion." My heart warmed up. Finally, a family moment to celebrate this achievement. What a lovely idea. Where will it be? "At Lone Star Prime." The pride in his voice was evident. Savannah insisted. "She says it's the most elegant steakhouse in the city. Got us a reservation for Saturday night. It'll be perfect." "What time?" I asked, trying to keep my voice natural. 8 o'clock. It'll just be family. Me, Savannah, Wyatt, Blake, and Charlotte. Intimate, but elegant. Savannah wants it to be an unforgettable night. I waited. I waited for him to officially invite me. I waited for him to say, "Obviously you'll be there too, Mom." But the silence stretched on, filled only with distant voices and the sound of papers rustling. "And me too, right?" The question came out more fragile than I would have liked. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat while waiting for the obvious, natural response any son would give his mother. "Ah, Mom." His voice changed completely, becoming uncomfortable, almost embarrassed. "Well, you know how it is. Savannah organized something more. How can I put it? More formal, more sophisticated." "Sophisticated?" I repeated, not understanding. "Well, Mom, Lone Star Prime is a very upscale place, very fancy. Savannah is worried you might feel out of place, you know how these places are. Everyone's well-dressed, talking about art, expensive wines. Maybe it's better if you don't come. Could be kind of awkward." His words echoed in my ears like a distorted echo. Awkward. Out of place. Worried I might feel inadequate. My own son, whom I raised with so much love and dedication, was telling me I didn't have enough class to frequent an elegant restaurant. "Awkward for whom, Austin?" The question came out colder than I intended. "It's nothing personal, Mom. It's just that, well, you understand. They're different environments. Savannah suggested maybe we could have lunch on Sunday at a place more suited to your profile. Somewhere you'd feel more comfortable." Your profile. Comfortable. As if I were a child who needed protection from adult situations. As if I were inadequate to socialize with refined people. "I understand." My voice came out controlled, but I felt my blood boiling. "So y'all think I don't have enough class for Lone Star Prime?" "Mom, it's not that. It's just that, look, you're amazing just the way you are. But they're different worlds, you know. You with your diners, working since early age, with that more simple way. There's nothing wrong with that, but on an occasion like this, with Savannah's friends, people who are more, you understand, people who are more. More what? More important, more educated, more worthy of respect. Of course I understand, son. The words came out calmly, but inside I was devastated. Y'all have fun. You're not upset, are you, Mom? It's just that Savannah gets nervous about these things, and I want it to be a perfect night. I'm not upset. That was a lie. I was shattered. Have a great evening. I hung up the phone and sat there in my office, looking out the window that overlooked downtown. Down below I could see the elegant facade of Lone Star Prime with its smoked glass windows and discreet sign in golden letters. My restaurant. The place I built with every penny of my savings, every decision made carefully, every detail planned to create exactly the sophisticated environment my children admired so much. The establishment that the city's elite frequented, where businessmen closed important deals and traditional families celebrated special occasions. They thought I didn't have the class to be there, that it would be embarrassing to bring me, that I needed to stay in my adequate place, away from refined people. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. If they only knew. If they knew that the simple woman who embarrassed them so much was actually the owner of the most elegant place in the city. I picked up the phone and dialed the restaurant. Lone Star Prime, good afternoon. This is Carlos. Carlos, it's Magnolia. Good afternoon, Miss Magnolia. How are you? Fine. Listen, Saturday night we'll have some special guests at the table for 8, reservation under Savannah Henderson's name. I want y'all to give them the best service possible. Of course. Any special occasion? I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Let's just say it'll be a night of big revelations. That afternoon I made a decision that would forever change our family dynamics. On Saturday, I would be at Lone Star Prime, not as the inadequate mother who should stay home, but as the owner of the establishment. It was time for my sons to discover who the woman they so underestimated really was. After that phone call, I spent the entire night awake, going over in my memory how I got here, how a woman who started selling barbecue plates door to door became the owner of the most sophisticated steakhouse in the city, and why her own sons couldn't see that. The story began over 30 years ago, when Jimmy had the accident that changed our family's course forever. He worked as a supervisor at an automotive parts factory, a stable job that gave us a simple but dignified life, until that September morning, when a forklift lost its brakes and crushed his leg against a wall. The surgery saved the leg but not the job. The injury left complications that prevented him from standing for long periods. The company's settlement covered medical expenses but not our subsistence. Overnight, I found myself as the sole income source for a family with 2 small children. Austin was 6, Blake was 4, 2 energetic children full of dreams who deserved the same opportunities as any other child. I wasn't going to let the situation bring us down. It was Jimmy who gave me the idea. Magnolia, you make the best barbecue in the neighborhood. Why don't you try selling it? At first, it was just a test. I made a batch of pulled pork sandwiches and brisket plates on a Thursday and took them to sell at the boys' school gate. In 2 hours, I had sold everything. On Friday, I doubled the quantity. Same result. I realized I had found more than an income source. I had discovered a natural talent for business. I started small but with ambition. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to prepare the food, sell at the school in the morning, at the office buildings in the area during lunch break, and at neighbors' houses in the afternoon. The first months were tough. My feet would swell from so much walking. My hands got calloused from all the preparation work. But every dollar that came in was a victory, and the boys saw it all. They witnessed my determination, my effort, my refusal to play victim. "Mom, why do you work so hard?" Austin asked me one night when he saw me counting the day's sales coins. "Because I want y'all to have a better future, my love. And a better future is built with work." After a year selling on the streets, I gathered courage and enough money to rent a small commercial space, 20 square meters in a working-class neighborhood. But it was mine. Our first diner was born there with 2 small tables, a wooden counter that Jimmy built with his own hands, and lots of dreams. The secret to success wasn't just the food. It was the service. I knew every customer by name, knew what they liked to eat, asked about their families. I transformed that little space into an extension of my own home, where people felt welcomed. Austin and Blake grew up there. They did homework at a little table in the back, helped serve sodas when they got older. They learned early on the value of work and dedication. But they were never forced to work. It was their choice to help, a way to participate in our family dream. "One day I'm gonna have a restaurant bigger than this," Austin said at age 10, looking around the small diner. "You will, son. But don't forget where it all started." In 5 years, the first diner was doing so well, I could open a second one, then a third. It wasn't reckless expansion. It was planned growth, every step taken carefully. I studied the market, analyzed the competition, chose strategic locations. The boys attended private school, took English classes, had nice clothes and toys, but were never spoiled. They knew all of that came from our joint work. Jimmy, even physically limited, handled the administrative part. I managed operations, and the boys contributed by being exemplary students. "Mom, you're the smartest woman I know," Blake told me at age 12 when I explained how inventory control worked. "Intelligence without work is worthless, son, and work without intelligence is just exhaustion." When Austin turned 15, I had established a clear rule. Education first, but responsibility too. They got allowances but had obligations. Bad grades meant reduced allowance. Good behavior was rewarded. I learned that raising independent children wasn't about giving everything. It was about teaching them to achieve. "Why don't you rest a little, Mom?" Austin asked me at 16, seeing me review the diner's numbers on a Sunday night. "Because the money that pays for your school doesn't fall from the sky, son. It comes from my sweat, and as long as I can work to give y'all the best, I'll work." He got serious. Back then, he understood, valued, respected. When they graduated high school, both got into public universities, but I insisted on paying for prep courses, study materials, everything they needed. Not because I had to, but because I believed in their potential. "Mom, you don't need to pay for an apartment near campus," Austin said when he got into business administration. "I can live here and take the bus." "No, son. Education is an investment, and I invest in what's worthwhile." I paid for both their apartments, but with clear conditions. High grades, graduation on time, and once they graduated, complete financial independence. I wasn't raising dependent children. I was forming capable men, and it worked. Both graduated with honors, got excellent jobs, built their own careers. When they married, they were completely independent. I had fulfilled my role as a mother. Give them the tools, not a lifetime on a silver platter. But somewhere in the middle of this process, something changed. I don't know if it was their wives' influence, their financial success, or simply forgetting where they came from. They stopped seeing my struggle as a source of pride and began seeing it as a source of embarrassment. The woman who worked like a warrior to give them the best became, in their eyes, just a simple woman, inadequate for their new social circles. But they forgot something important. The same determination that made me start selling barbecue on the street was what took me far beyond what they imagined. And on Saturday night, They would discover exactly how far that determination brought me. The first time I met Savannah, I knew she'd be a problem. Not because of her beauty. She really was stunning with that impeccable blonde hair and the posture of someone who attended good schools. The problem was in her look. A look that evaluated, judged, and classified people into categories. Austin was 23 when he brought her to meet the family. Fresh graduate, new job at a consulting firm, full of dreams and plans. She was the same age but carried on her shoulders the weight of a traditional city surname. Mom, I want you to meet Savannah. He said that Sunday lunch, his eyes shining with young passion. She entered our house like someone entering a museum, looking at everything with anthropological curiosity. She greeted me with a polite but distant smile. Very nice to meet you, Mrs. Magnolia. Austin talks about you a lot. During lunch, I observed how she behaved. She complimented the food with exaggerated surprise, as if she didn't expect someone like me to cook well. She asked about the diners with the tone of someone interested in an exotic hobby. How interesting. You must meet so many different people working with food, she said, delicately cutting her meat. I meet people. Just people. I replied. I don't see any difference between them. Her smile faltered for a second. In the following months, visits became more frequent. Savannah was always polite, always cordial, but always making it clear we weren't from the same world. Small comments, subtle gestures, seemingly innocent suggestions. Oh, Mrs. Magnolia, you work so hard. Must be tiring being in the kitchen all day, she'd say, examining her perfect nails. Or then, what a cozy house. It has such simple charm. Simple. That word became a code between us. Jimmy noticed my discomfort. She's just a spoiled girl, Magnolia. She'll learn. It's not about learning, Jimmy. It's about respect. And she doesn't respect me. When Austin announced the engagement, I tried to be the understanding mother. After all, my son was happy. And that should be enough. But when the wedding preparations began, Savannah's true colors appeared. Mrs. Magnolia, about the guest list, she began in one of our planning meetings. Maybe it's better if you invite only the closest relatives. You know how it is. The party will be at a more sophisticated place. Sophisticated how? Well, it's a traditional club in the city. The people who frequent it are more formal. We don't want anyone to feel out of place. Translation. My friends from the diners weren't welcome. And about your dress, she continued. I can recommend a store where they have more appropriate clothes for mothers of the groom. Appropriate. Another code word. The wedding was exactly as Savannah planned. Elegant, expensive, and cold. I felt like an extra in my own son's life, sitting at a side table politely greeting people who barely acknowledged me, watching Austin transform into someone I didn't recognize. During the party, I heard Savannah explaining to a friend, Austin's mother is a hard-working woman. Poor thing works with food, you know? Very dedicated, but of course she didn't have the same opportunities we had. Poor thing. Dedicated. As if I were a charity case. 2 years later, it was Blake's turn to fall in love. Charlotte was different from Savannah. An elementary school teacher, simpler background, without her sister-in-law's aristocratic arrogance. At first, I thought it would be different. And it was, for about 6 months. Charlotte was genuinely nice in the beginning, talked to me about education, asked for recipes, seemed interested in the family's history. But I soon realized she was studying our habits, our dynamics, our language. Mrs. Magnolia, you're inspiring, she'd say. A woman who achieved so much on her own. But things changed quickly after the wedding. Charlotte began frequenting the same circles as Savannah, going to wives' lunches, participating in charity teas, gradually adopting her sister-in-law's behavioral codes. Mother-in-law, about Christmas, she told me in a phone call after a few months of marriage. Savannah suggested we do something more intimate this year. Just us couples, you know. More modern. Modern meant without the mother-in-law. And maybe it's better not to bring homemade desserts, she continued. Savannah ordered sweets from a French pastry shop. It'll be more harmonious. More harmonious. My desserts that the whole family had always loved weren't adequate anymore. What hurt most was seeing my son silently agreeing with this transformation. Austin, who used to introduce me with pride as my mother, the entrepreneur, now introduced me as my mother who works with food. A subtle difference that made all the difference. Blake started making jokes about my direct manner. Mom doesn't mince words. He'd laugh to friends. She's from the time when things were simpler. Family gatherings became exercises in mutual tolerance. I tolerated the comments. They tolerated my presence. My sons tolerated the growing tension. The most frustrating thing was that they couldn't completely hide their interest in my money. When they needed something, down payment for a new car, house renovation, expensive course for Wyatt, they knew exactly where to find me. But when it came to including me in important social events, I became an inconvenient relative. Mom, about Wyatt's baptism, Austin called me nervously. The ceremony will be at the downtown church, that more traditional one, and then the party at the club. Savannah wants it to be very intimate, just godparents and close family. I'm not close family? Of course you are, but you understand it's a more formal environment. The club people are different. Different from me. Better than me. It was during this period that I began to realize my sons were ashamed of their own origin. Ashamed of the mother who worked like a warrior to give them opportunities. Ashamed of the woman who transformed willpower into financial success. They preferred the edited version of our story. Two talented young men who overcame difficulties and got where they got through their own merit. The protagonist of the struggle, me, was an embarrassing detail they preferred to keep in the background. But they hadn't seen anything yet, because while they publicly diminished me, I was secretly building something that would completely change the game. The day Wyatt was born should have been one of the happiest of my life. My first grandson, the continuation of our family, the boy who would carry our surname forward. But from the first moment, Savannah made it clear I would be a grandmother, only on her terms. Mrs. Magnolia, about visits to the maternity ward, she told me, while still pregnant at 8 months. The doctor recommended they be very restrictive. Only immediate parents in the first days. You understand, right? Newborns are very fragile. Immediate parents. As if I were any stranger. I waited 3 days to meet my grandson. 3 days listening to Savannah's friends post on social media about how beautiful the little prince was, while I, the paternal grandmother, awaited authorization to see him. When they finally allowed me into the room, Wyatt was sleeping in the crib next to the bed. A perfect baby, with Austin's eyes and the family chin. My heart melted instantly. He's beautiful, I whispered, approaching slowly. Careful not to wake him, Savannah immediately alerted. He has very light sleep, and please sanitize your hands in that dispenser there. The pediatrician said newborns can't have contact with many people. I sanitized my hands like any visitor, and stood there looking at my grandson without being able to touch him. When he cries, it's better if you don't pick him up. Savannah continued, adjusting herself in bed. We're establishing a specific routine. The home care nurse advised it's better for him to get used to few people in the first months. Home care nurse, private nurse, specific routine, everything planned to keep me at a distance. In the following months, the rules multiplied. When Wyatt turned 2 months, I finally got to hold him for exactly 15 minutes. With Savannah timing and giving instructions on how to support his head, how to hold his body, how not to make sudden movements. You don't have much experience with newborn babies. she justified. It's better to go slowly. No experience. Me, who raised 2 sons practically alone. Savannah. I tried to talk during one of these supervised visits. I raised Austin and Blake. I know how to care for babies. But it was a different time, wasn't it, Mrs. Magnolia? Nowadays, pediatrics has evolved a lot. There are new methods, specific care. You don't get offended, right? We just want to do everything right. New methods. As if a grandmother's love had an expiration date. When Wyatt was 6 months old, visits were organized with prior scheduling. I had to call beforehand, confirm the time, and there were clear rules about what I could and couldn't do. Mrs. Magnolia, about giving him food. Savannah instructed me one afternoon when I was taking care of Wyatt. It's better to leave it to me or the nanny. He has a very specific diet controlled by the pediatric nutritionist. You can only give water if he asks. Water. I could give water to my own grandson. And about toys, she continued. We only brought the educational ones, specially developed to stimulate cognitive development. The other toys, stay put away. I looked at the cart full of toys I had brought. Colorful cars, soft dolls, fun rattles, all inadequate for the boy's cognitive development. And if he cries a lot? I asked. You call us. He has specific schedules for everything. Sleep, feeding, play. We're following a very efficient American method. American method to care for a Brazilian child who was 6 months old. What hurt most was seeing Wyatt react to my presence. When I arrived, he'd smile, stretch his little arms, want to be held. But there was always someone interfering, limiting, controlling our contact. Oh, how cute. He likes Grandma, Savannah would say with a forced smile. But now it's his nap time. You can come back tomorrow if you want. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. At 10 months, Wyatt started saying his first words. Mama, Dada, Nana, for the English nanny Savannah hired. But when he babbled something that sounded like Grandma, Savannah would quickly change the subject. Oh, he's just making random sounds. The speech therapist said it's normal at this stage. Speech therapist for a 10-month-old child. One day when Wyatt was a year old, I arrived for the scheduled visit and found Savannah organizing a birthday party. How lovely! A little party for Wyatt, I exclaimed, genuinely excited. Oh, it's just a small gathering with the other mothers from the early stimulation group, she replied without looking me in the eyes. Nothing much, just for the children to socialize. What time does it start? Can I help with anything? The silence was embarrassing. Well, Mrs. Magnolia, they're all mothers with similar profiles, you know. They take the same courses, have the same educational values. You might feel a bit out of place. Out of place at my own grandson's birthday party. But can I come for just a little bit? Just to congratulate him. It's better not. He gets very stimulated with strange people. The child psychologist said too much partying can harm emotional development. Strange people. I was strange people to my grandson. I left there heartbroken. In the car, I cried like I hadn't cried in years. It wasn't just about Wyatt. It was about everything. About being treated like an inconvenience. About having my grandmother's love rationed. About being considered inadequate to live with my own blood. That night, Jimmy found me sitting in the kitchen, looking at photos of Wyatt I managed to take during supervised visits. What's wrong, Magnolia? I told him about the party, about the rules, about feeling like a stranger in my grandson's life. That girl is going too far, he said indignantly. Wyatt is our grandson. We have the right to live with him. We have the right, but we don't get respect. Talk to Austin. Austin agrees with everything she does. For him, Savannah is the perfect mother, following modern methods, and I'm the outdated grandmother who doesn't understand child education. It was during this time that I began to realize It wasn't just about maternal overprotection. Savannah was deliberately limiting my time with Wyatt, not out of care for the child, but out of shame of me. I wasn't the type of grandmother she wanted for her son. I didn't come from the adequate social environment, didn't have the necessary refinement, didn't follow her group's aesthetic standards. Wyatt deserved a more appropriate grandmother. And since she couldn't replace me, the solution was to keep me as distant as possible. The ironic thing is that while they treated me like an inconvenient relative, I was building something that would completely change this dynamic. They underestimated me, diminished me, excluded me, but soon they would discover that the inadequate grandmother they so despised had much more to offer than they imagined. It was on a Tuesday morning while reading the local newspaper over coffee that I saw the ad that would change my life forever. A small note in the business section. Lone Star Prime seeks partners and investors for judicial recovery. Lone Star Prime. I knew the place by name. It was considered the most elegant in the city, frequented by the local elite. But I had never entered there. Not for lack of money, but because places like that yet always seemed destined for people different from me. Curious, I called the lawyer responsible for the sale. "The restaurant is going through financial difficulties," he explained. "The previous owners made bad investments and now need capital to pay off debts. They're selling participation shares to interested investors. What kind of investment would be necessary for a minority participation?" "About $150,000. For majority participation." "Well, it would be a larger investment." $150,000. Exactly the amount I had saved in a separate investment, fruit of years of rigorous savings from the diners, money that was reserved for an emergency or future retirement. "Can I visit the establishment?" "Of course. When would you like to go?" "This afternoon." That same afternoon, I drove downtown with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. Lone Star Prime was on a noble corner in a restored old mansion with very good taste. The facade was discreet but elegant, with large windows and an entrance that commanded respect. The lawyer met me at the door and led me inside. What I saw left me speechless. The restaurant was simply stunning. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, tables with white linen tablecloths, chairs upholstered in leather. The decoration mixed classic and modern, with sophistication I had never seen up close. The kitchen, which I could observe through glass doors, was equipped with professional ovens and state-of-the-art equipment. "How can it be going bankrupt?" I asked, impressed. "Bad management," the lawyer replied dryly. The former owners spent beyond their means on renovations, hired too many employees, and couldn't maintain cash flow. The restaurant itself is excellent. The problem was administrative. I walked through the empty dining room, imagining what it would be like to see it full of people. I touched the tables, observed every decoration detail, smelled the still-present aroma of fine seasonings. There was something about that place that called to me deeply. "Can I see the numbers?" "Of course, but I need to warn you it's a risky investment." I took the documents home and spent the entire night studying spreadsheets, balance sheets, projections. Jimmy helped me with the more complex calculations, but the decision was mine. "Magnolia, are you sure?" he said, worried. "It's a lot of money." "Jimmy, I understand food service. I know what makes a business succeed or fail. This place just needs competent management. But why an upscale restaurant? Your diners already give good returns." I was silent for a moment, trying to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. "Because I want to prove I can." "Prove to whom?" "To myself." Actually, it was more than that. But I couldn't verbalize it. There was something about owning a place that high society frequented that moved me. Maybe it was the chance to show that a woman from humble beginnings could indeed understand sophistication. A week later, I signed the purchase contract for the first shares, $50,000 for a 20% participation. It was my first step on a journey I still didn't know where it would lead. The first months were intense learning. I observed everything: how the employees served, how the dishes were prepared, how customers behaved. It was a completely different world from my diners, but the basic principles were the same: quality, service, and efficient management. "Miss Magnolia," the chef told me during one of my visits, "you have a very good eye for this. Your suggestions are working." I had suggested small adjustments to the menu. More elaborate dishes, but with more accessible ingredients. Some options that expanded the public without losing sophistication. And it was working. In 6 months, the restaurant already showed signs of recovery. In a year, it was operating in the black. That's when the other partners approached me. "We'd like to sell our shares," one of them told me. "Would you be interested in assuming total control?" I had all the interest in the world. I used money from the diners, took a bank loan, and gradually bought all the shares. In 2 years, Lone Star Prime was completely mine. The transformation I promoted was gradual but profound. I maintained the elegance and sophistication, but brought my experience in management and service. I trained the team to be welcoming without losing class. I reformulated processes to optimize costs. I created special events that attracted new customers. What I was most proud of was having managed to maintain the high standard without losing the welcoming essence that was always my trademark. Lone Star Prime remained elegant, but now it had soul. "How did you manage to transform this place?" Carlos, the maitre d' I hired, asked me one day. "It's not about money, Carlos. It's about attention to detail and respect for people." In 3 years, Lone Star Prime had become the most sought-after restaurant in the city. Businessmen closed deals there. Traditional families celebrated anniversaries. Young couples proposed marriage. It was the place where the local elite met, and throughout this entire time, I kept the absolute secret from the family. For them, I continued being just the owner of the diners. When they asked about my schedules or commitments, I said I was expanding business or taking care of suppliers. "Mom, you've been very busy lately," Austin commented at a Sunday lunch. "Business requires dedication, son. But don't overdo it. You're already at an age to slow down a bit." If he only knew that in my 50s I was running the most sophisticated establishment in the city. The most ironic thing was occasionally hearing comments about Lone Star Prime in family conversations. "Savannah wants to have her birthday there," Austin said once. "But it's hard to get a reservation. They say the place has become a fever among high society." "Must be expensive," I commented, feigning disinterest. "It is, but it's worth it. Maybe someday we'll get a table." Maybe indeed, I thought to myself, smiling inwardly. For 4 years I lived this double life. By day, the simple businesswoman of the diners. At night and weekends, the discreet owner of the most elegant restaurant in the city. 2 worlds that coexisted without touching, until the day came when these worlds would collide spectacularly. Jimmy left on a Sunday morning without warning, without goodbye. Massive heart attack at 62 while reading the newspaper on the house porch. When I got back from the bakery with fresh bread for breakfast, I found him leaning back in his chair with a serene expression on his face, as if he had just fallen asleep. But he didn't wake up anymore. The days that followed were a blur of people, flowers, condolences, and procedures. Austin and Blake took turns with funeral arrangements, efficient and organized as always. Savannah took control of social arrangements, deciding who could and couldn't visit, organizing wake schedules as if it were a corporate event. "Mrs. Magnolia, maybe it's better to limit visits," she suggested on the day of the wake. "Too many people can be tiring for you at this moment. Too many people." She was talking about my friends from the diners, Old customers who wanted to pay their respects. Simple people Jimmy knew and cherished. Once again, I was being protected from my own life. The funeral was as Jimmy would have liked. Simple, sincere, full of people who truly knew him. But I noticed the clear division at the cemetery. On one side, family and close friends. On the other, the people Savannah considered adequate. The boys' work colleagues, club acquaintances, neighbors from the upscale part of town. I stood in the middle, literally and figuratively, watching how my own grief was being managed by other people. "Mom, we're gonna stay with you for a few days," Austin told me after the burial. "Until you get organized." "I don't need it, son. I know how to take care of myself. But it's better not to be alone right now." They stayed 3 days. 3 days of a house full of constant movement, people taking care of me as if I were an emotional invalid. Savannah organized meals, Charlotte tidied the house, the boys answered the phone and received visitors. On the 3rd day, during breakfast, Austin announced, "Mom, we need to get back to our routine, but you can call whenever you need anything." And just like that, suddenly the house was empty again. The silence that settled in was different from any silence I had ever experienced. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of Jimmy, his presence, his low laughter, his comments about the newspaper. In the following weeks, a routine of family check-ins was established. Austin called on Tuesdays and Fridays. Blake showed up on Sundays for lunch. Protocol visits, punctual, as if they were fulfilling a schedule of care for the widow. "How are you feeling, Mom?" They'd always ask with genuine concern. "I'm fine," I'd respond. And I was. Actually sad, missing him. But fine. What they didn't understand was that I was dealing with grief in my own way. Work had always been my way of processing difficulties. But I quickly realized that my inclusion in their lives now had even stricter rules, now that I was alone. "Mom, about Charlotte's birthday." Blake called me a month after Jimmy's passing. "We're gonna do something small, just ourselves. You wanna come?" "Of course. Just it'll be at a new steakhouse. Nothing too formal, real casual. Casual. Adequate for the widow in mourning." 2 weeks later, I found out by chance that Charlotte's casual birthday had actually been at the country club, an elegant party for 40 people. They had a separate lunch with me the following Sunday at the city's simplest restaurant. "Why did y'all lie about the party?" I confronted Blake directly. He was visibly embarrassed. "Mom, it's just that you're going through a delicate time. We thought it better not to expose you to very busy events. Movement does me good, Blake. Silence hurts me." But Charlotte was worried. She said parties might be kind of heavy for someone in recent mourning. Charlotte was worried. They didn't ask what I wanted. They decided for me. It was then that I began to realize that being a widow had put me in an even more restrictive category. Now I wasn't just the simple mother. I was the simple and vulnerable mother who needed to be protected from complex social situations. Family invitations became increasingly rare and specific. Sunday lunches at my house or at popular restaurants, quick visits to see how I was doing, phone calls to check if I needed anything. But for elegant dinners, club events, important celebrations, I was no longer included even as an option. It was as if my presence could contaminate others' joy with my widow's sadness. "Have you thought about traveling?" Savannah suggested during one of these checkup visits. "Maybe a seniors cruise. Meet people in the same situation." Seniors. Same situation. As if widowhood were a contagious disease that could only be cured in the company of other widows. The most painful thing was realizing that my sons agreed with this gradual isolation. They thought they were protecting me, sparing me, helping me overcome the loss. They didn't realize they were pushing me toward even greater loneliness. Work became my total refuge. At Lone Star Prime, I was the respected and competent owner. At the diners, I was the experienced manager beloved by employees. In these environments, nobody saw me as poor thing, vulnerable, or inadequate. I was just Magnolia. And that began to be enough. 6 months after Jimmy's passing, I made a silent decision. I wasn't going to wait for inclusion anymore. I wasn't going to accept being emotionally managed by people who thought they knew what was best for me. If they wanted to keep me at a distance, perfect. I had my own life to live. The disrespect didn't come all at once. It settled in gradually, like a leak that starts imperceptible and gradually rots the entire structure. In the months following Jimmy's passing, I realized that my opinion had become even more irrelevant to my own sons. The first time I really realized it was during a discussion about Wyatt's education. He was 3 years old, and Savannah wanted to put him in a bilingual and very expensive school. "I don't know if it's necessary," I commented during a Sunday lunch. "A child that age needs more affection and play than intensive method." Savannah and Austin exchanged a look they couldn't disguise. "Oh, Mrs. Magnolia," Savannah sighed with forced patience. "You don't understand how modern education works nowadays. The earlier a child is stimulated, the better. Proven science. I raised 2 sons who graduated and have solid careers." "But it was a different time, wasn't it, mother-in-law?" Charlotte interjected with a condescending smile. "Market demands have changed a lot. Today you need to always be one step ahead. You might not understand these more complex issues. Education has evolved a lot since you raised us," Austin added, his voice carrying irritating patience, as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Complex issues, as if I were incapable of understanding basic concepts about education. Austin, I've been running 3 businesses for decades. I think I can understand complex issues." "Of course, Mom. But one thing is managing diners. Another thing is modern pedagogy. They're different areas." The way he said diners made it clear he considered my work something lesser, less intellectual, less sophisticated. Family meetings became exercises in tolerance. When I expressed any opinion about politics, economics, education, or any other subject, I received polite smiles and quick topic changes. "Inflation is really complicating ingredient costs," I commented once, trying to participate in a conversation about economics. "Oh, Mom, those macroeconomic things are more complicated," Blake responded with a patronizing smile. "It's not just about flour prices, you know? Flour prices. As if my understanding of economics was limited to grocery shopping. What bothered me most was the poorly disguised shame they felt when they had to introduce me to people from their social circle. One afternoon, I ran into Austin at the mall with a work colleague. "Oh, Mom," he said, visibly uncomfortable. "This is Paolo, my boss." "Paolo, this is my mother." "Very nice to meet you, Mrs. Magnolia," I replied, extending my hand. "My mother works with food," Austin rushed to explain, as if he needed to justify my existence. "Works with food, not is an entrepreneur or has her own businesses. Works with food, as if I were a restaurant employee." "How interesting," Paolo responded politely. "Must be very honest work." Honest, the word educated people use when they can't think of anything complimentary to say. The exclusions also became more obvious. I found out through casual comments about important dinners I wasn't invited to, social events where my presence would be inadequate, celebrations where I wouldn't feel comfortable. "We went to Paolo's graduation dinner yesterday," Charlotte commented casually in a conversation. "What a beautiful place. A super sophisticated Japanese restaurant." "I didn't know there was a graduation," I responded. An embarrassing silence. "Oh, it was a very specific thing, mother-in-law. Just classmates and families more. How can I explain? More inserted in the same environment, you know. Inserted in the same environment. I wasn't inserted in the adequate environment to accompany my own son's graduation. And it was at Sakura, Blake added. That Japanese place that costs a fortune per person. We didn't even know if it was worth the expense. The ironic thing is that I knew Sakura well. It was one of Lone Star Prime's main competitors. The media frequently compared our establishments, if they only knew. The peak of disrespect came during a discussion about investments. I had mentioned I was thinking about diversifying the business. "Be careful with those ideas, Mom," Austin warned me with a worried air. "You don't have experience with more sophisticated investments. You might end up losing money." "What kind of diversification are you thinking about?" Savannah asked with feigned curiosity. "Maybe something in the more elaborate gastronomy line." They laughed. Literally laughed. "Oh, Mrs. Magnolia," Savannah said between laughs. "Elaborate gastronomy is very different from diners. They're completely different audiences, more demanding palates, much higher operational costs. Mom doesn't understand these differences," Blake explained to Charlotte, as if I weren't present. "For her, food is food." "It's not criticism, mother-in-law," Charlotte rushed to say. "It's just that they're very specific niches. You need a lot of refinement." Refinement, the word that always came back. "Maybe it's better for you to focus on what you already know how to do well," Austin concluded. "Diners are an honest and profitable business. No need to complicate things." At that moment, I made a silent decision. I was tired of being underestimated, belittled, treated like an inconvenient relative who needed to be tolerated. Tired of having my intelligence questioned, my experience diminished, my capacity doubted. They thought I didn't have enough refinement to understand elaborate gastronomy, that I was inadequate for sophisticated social circles, that my opinion didn't matter in complex subjects. In a few days they would discover how wrong they were, and the lesson would come in a way they'd never forget. After that devastating call from Austin, I spent the entire night awake, walking through the empty house, going over every word, every tone of voice, every embarrassing silence. The echo of the phrase, "could be kind of awkward," hammered in my head like an annoying song we can't stop singing. Around dawn, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee that got cold without me noticing, looking out the window at the approaching morning. How many times had I accepted being set aside? How many small humiliations had I swallowed in the name of family harmony? The answer came clear as daylight. Too many. Around 5 a.m., I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to accept being treated like a problem, to be managed anymore. I wasn't going to pretend I didn't notice the contempt disguised as protection. And I definitely wasn't going to let pass the opportunity to show my sons who I really was. I called Lone Star Prime as soon as it opened. "Carlos, it's Magnolia. I need to talk to you about Saturday night." "Good morning, Miss Magnolia. The table for 8 under Mrs. Henderson's name?" "Exactly. I want you to treat that reservation very specially. They don't know I'm the owner." I could feel the curiosity in Carlos's voice. "How so, Miss Magnolia?" "It's my family. My sons and daughters-in-law. They told me I'd be inadequate to frequent a place as refined as our restaurant." The silence on the other end was long. "Miss Magnolia, with all due respect, but that's ridiculous. I know. That's why I'm going to show up there Saturday. Not as a guest, as the owner. And I want it to be a complete surprise." We spent the entire morning organizing the details. Carlos perfectly understood what I wanted. Impeccable treatment for them. But nothing that would reveal my connection to the place. I would arrive later, observe the situation develop, and then make my entrance. "Are you sure about this?" Carlos asked for the 3rd time. "Absolutely. It's time for some truth to come to light." The rest of the week passed at a strange speed. During the day, I functioned on autopilot, visited the diners, resolved administrative issues, attended to suppliers, but my mind was completely focused on Saturday. I chose my outfit carefully. An elegant black dress I had recently bought, genuine leather shoes, the gold necklace Jimmy gave me on our last wedding anniversary. Nothing flashy, but everything of impeccable quality. I wanted to be impeccable when the moment came. On Friday, Austin called me. "Mom, about tomorrow. You're not upset, are you? It's just that Savannah got kind of nervous about the idea of taking too many people." "I'm not upset, son," I lied with a calm that surprised me. "Y'all have fun. We can have lunch on Sunday if you want, at a more peaceful place." "Sure. Have a great evening." Saturday arrived with clear skies and a sense of determination I hadn't felt in years. I spent the afternoon getting ready carefully, but unhurriedly. Every gesture was deliberate, every choice thoughtful. At 7:30 p.m., I drove downtown with an accelerated heart, but firm in my decision. I parked on a side street and walked to the restaurant, observing the Saturday night movement downtown. Lone Star Prime was elegant as always, with its soft lights and sophisticated atmosphere that filled me with so much pride. Carlos met me at the side entrance we used for administrative matters. "They've been here since 8, he informed me in a low voice. "Table in the center of the main dining room, as Mrs. Henderson requested. She made a point of mentioning several times that it was a very special occasion." "And how are they behaving?" "As expected. Mrs. Henderson is, let's say, very comfortable, treating the staff like her personal staff." I smiled. It was exactly what I imagined. "Perfect. Await my signal." I took a deep breath, straightened my dress, and prepared for the scene I had planned all week. It was time for my sons to discover that the inadequate mother who embarrassed them so much was actually the owner of the place they most admired in the city. I entered the main dining room of Lone Star Prime at 8:40, when they were already in the middle of their meal. The atmosphere was elegant as always, with soft music and golden lights creating the sophisticated ambiance I had planned with so much care. My family was exactly where Carlos had informed me. Center table, everyone impeccably dressed. Austin in a dark suit, Savannah stunning in a red dress, Blake and Charlotte also elegant, Wyatt beautiful as always, behaving like a little prince. I walked slowly through the dining room, discreetly greeting other customers until I positioned myself near their table. It was Blake who saw me first. "Mom." His face showed genuine surprise. "What are you doing here?" The conversation at the table died instantly. Austin turned around. Savannah was visibly uncomfortable. Charlotte lowered her eyes. "Hi, son. I came to have dinner." "But how?" Austin stammered. "You didn't say that everything was okay not being invited." I smiled calmly. "Everything is okay." Savannah quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. "Mrs. Magnolia, what a surprise. But, well, this place is kind of expensive, you know. Maybe you'd feel more comfortable at a cheaper restaurant." "Yeah, the prices here are pretty steep," Charlotte added with fake concern. "Maybe a simpler place would be better so it doesn't hurt your wallet." I looked around the dining room that I myself had decorated, at the waiters I had personally trained, at the details I had chosen one by one. "Actually," I said calmly, "I think I can afford to dine here." "Mom, you don't need to force yourself," Austin whispered, clearly embarrassed. "We can pay for you if you want to stay." "Pay for me. Just this once," Savannah offered with forced magnanimity. "As a gift." At that moment, Carlos approached the table with his impeccable professional posture. "Good evening. Is everything perfect with dinner?" "It's great," Savannah responded with a superior air. "But maybe my mother-in-law needs a smaller table in a more reserved corner so she doesn't feel intimidated by the atmosphere." Carlos looked at me discreetly, awaiting my signal. "Actually," I responded tranquilly. I don't need a table at all. How so? Austin asked, confused. Because I'm the owner of this restaurant. The silence that followed was absolute. I could see the expressions changing one by one. Confusion, disbelief, then the slow recognition of truth. Carlos, I continued, keeping my voice serene. These are my sons and daughters-in-law, the ones who thought I'd be inadequate to frequent my own establishment. Very pleased to meet y'all. Carlos responded with perfect professionalism. Miss Magnolia is an exceptional owner. She transformed this place into the most respected restaurant in the city. Savannah went pale. Charlotte opened and closed her mouth without being able to speak. My sons looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. This is true? Austin managed to ask. Completely true. For 5 years. But how? Why didn't you ever say anything? I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Because y'all never asked about my dreams, sons. You just assumed I wasn't capable of achieving them. The check came next, courtesy of the house, as Carlos politely explained. My sons left there knowing exactly who they had underestimated all those years. In the days following that night at Lone Star Prime, the silence was deafening. Neither Austin nor Blake called me. No Sunday visit. No routine checkup to see how I was doing. It was as if they needed time to digest who I really was. The first call came from Austin 5 days later. Mom, I need to talk to you. Sure, son. You can come over. He arrived alone, without Savannah, without Wyatt. He sat in the living room where we had talked so many times. But this time was different. He looked at me as if trying to decipher a puzzle. Why didn't you ever tell us about the restaurant? Why didn't y'all ever ask about my life beyond the diners? He was silent for a long moment. We underestimated you. You underestimated me and were ashamed of me. Those are different things, Austin. I didn't know that. That my mother had ambitions, that she dreamed of things beyond making barbecue, that she could understand sophistication. The words came out without bitterness, just as observations. Savannah is devastated, he continued. She says she can't look at her own reflection anymore. And you? How do you feel? Ashamed. Very ashamed. Well, I sighed. At least now y'all know that your inadequate mother owns the place you most admire in the city. Mom, forgive me. We were cruel, prejudiced, elitist, all of that. Blake appeared the next day, also alone. The conversation was similar, but he was more direct. Mom, you made fools of us. No, son. Y'all made fools of yourselves. But why hide it? Because y'all didn't deserve to know. Y'all treated me like an embarrassing relative because I would share my successes with people who were ashamed of me. Charlotte looked for me a week later, also alone. Mother-in-law, I wanted to apologize. For what exactly? For everything. For treating you like you were less intelligent, less capable. Charlotte, you don't owe me apologies. You were honest about what you thought of me. Now I'm being honest about what I think of y'all. The most interesting thing was observing how the dynamic changed suddenly. My opinion regained value. When I spoke about economics, they listened. When I suggested something about education, they took it into consideration. You could teach us about restaurant management, Blake suggested during a visit. I could, but y'all would have to ask me with respect, not condescension. Austin began including me in social events again, but now there was something different. It wasn't about tolerance anymore. It was about pride. He introduced me as my mother, the successful entrepreneur. Wyatt started visiting me more, without Savannah's restrictions. Our relationship became natural, affectionate, real. Grandma, you're cooler than I thought, he told me one afternoon. I'm not cooler, Wyatt. Y'all just stopped underestimating me. The most profound change was in myself. I stopped waiting for approval. I stopped accepting crumbs of affection. I established clear limits about how I wanted to be treated. Today, when I look back, I see that night at the restaurant wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. It was about showing that nobody, not even our children, has the right to diminish us. I learned that self-love isn't selfishness. It's necessity. And that sometimes, to be respected, we need to stop accepting disrespect. My name is Magnolia. I'm 58 years old. And I finally discovered that being a mother doesn't mean accepting any treatment. It means teaching our children to value us. And if this story touched your heart, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Your message might brighten someone's day.